I'm going to introduce to you our speaker, Alycia Wood. She grew up in church and was really interested in asking deep questions, and she studied criminal justice and sociology at Robert Wesleyan College, and then got her master's in social justice at Mary Grove College to further her passion for serving those in need in the developing world. This led her to be involved in various volunteering opportunities at orphanages, prisons, and shelters for the homeless in countries including Haiti, Honduras, and the Dominican Republic. And for the last 9 years, she's worked with different apologetics ministries, and she's currently working with Apologetics, Inc. And her topic tonight is going to be, why should I believe, does Christianity matter? And a fun fact about Alycia is that her favorite animal is an orca or a killer whale, and her dream is to swim with one, but since that's pretty dangerous, she's settled for swimming with dolphins. Welcome our speaker, Alycia.
Hi guys, I hope you're enjoying your food. How is it? I did one of those really quick kind of eats as I was kind of going around trying to say hello to you all. So really thankful that you guys are here and that you get to hear this talk today. I'm going to just raise a bunch of different issues, a bunch of different thoughts I have on, why should we believe? Does Christianity actually matter? And I'm going to discuss with you some reasons why I think Christianity matters, why I just think belief in general matters. And then I'm going to talk with you about some particular problems that I see for us as a civilization when we say we don't believe in Christianity, or when we say, I think Christianity should be removed, or something like that. And also some issues and objections that people will put forward as to why it is that they don't want to believe. So we're going to cover a lot of good ground today. And then we're going to hear from you guys and hear what questions you have over things that maybe I said or didn't say or could be clearer on. So with that said, many of you are probably wondering, why are you here? Maybe you saw a flyer, maybe somebody dragged you along and with the promise of good food, and so you came. I get that. I was a college student once. If you feed them, they will come, right? I mean, that's kind of how we function, right? So you may be like, why do I even care about this silly talk on religion or Jesus or the cross or dying or going to heaven and all of this kind of stuff? Like, why does any of it even really matter, right? I'm a thinker. I'm a rational person. I don't really need fairy tales. I don't need, some kind of psychological crutch to help me to feel better. So why does any of this really matter? Well, let me just start by saying, first of all, that there's only two options out there, guys. Either there is a God or gods, or there's not. That's it. There's two options. Either God or gods exist, or nothing exists. Those are the only two options. And what you believe about those two options impacts every single thing that you do every day of your life. If you think that there is no God, and so maybe we are just the equivalent of mold, that's going to change how you see another human being. Change how you see their value. If you believe that humans are extremely important and extremely valuable, well, then you're going to have a totally different view on them, and that's going to impact how you treat them. What you believe about these things actually impacts you, even if you don't realize it. See, we take a lot of things for granted. We don't realize how much of our thinking is actually, or the things that we hold true are actually religious-based, specifically Christianity-based. And I'll get a little bit more into that in a bit. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is whether you believe there's a God or there's not a God, it doesn't change whether or not God exists. So you can say, I don't want to believe in God. Is it giving you problems? Do you need me to come back there? Are you good? Is it giving you problems? Okay, let me know. Okay. You can say that, look, I don't really want to believe in God, but it's not going to make him go disappear. Okay? It doesn't mean that you're not going to be treated a certain way by him. Just because you chose not to believe doesn't absolve you from whatever it is that he desires. So it's important for you to know whether or not there is something, what that something is, for the very simple reason, guys, that truth matters. You guys are in university. It matters that when you go to class that your teacher is telling you something true. You don't come to university to learn lies. You believe truth matters. So if truth matters to you, then this question should also matter to you. What I don't do is tell somebody, here's the Bible, believe in what it says. I don't do that. I think that's silly. I think you need to be able to think through what you're believing with your mind. You need to know for certain if it's true. And so what I do is I like to give people evidence. I like to give people rationality. I like to give people reason as to why I think Christianity is true. Because what we believe is important, and truth does matter. It affects everything that you do. Now, I will say, some people say to me, yeah, Alycia, maybe I believe or consider this if Christians weren't so flaky. Christians say one thing and do another. They almost seem fake. They almost seem hypocritical. They almost seem as if they don't really believe what they're saying. So let me just take a minute and have a little session with the Christians in this room. If you've heard somebody say that, they aren't necessarily wrong. Christians definitely can be hypocritical. Christians definitely can say one thing and do another. Christians definitely can say that they want to live a certain way, but then act differently. There's a gentleman named Brennan Manning who's since passed away now, but he was a Christian pastor and theologian, and he once said the greatest single cause of atheism today are Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips and then walk out the door and deny him with their lifestyle. That is what an unbelieving world simply finds unbelievable. So if you are a Christian in here today, you need to know that people are watching you to see if what you actually believe in is actually true. And please, let me tell you, the standard isn't perfection. Nobody in this room that is not a Christian expects a Christian to be good 100% of the time. That is not the standard that anybody puts on you. That's not their standard they're asking for. What they're asking is that you are moving in the direction of doing what your belief says that you ought to do. And then when you mess up, you express remorse or sadness, like I shouldn't have done that. I wish I'd done something different, etc. Now I'm going to get Christians off the hook, and I'm going to speak to the non-Christians. Christians may struggle to live in a certain way, but Christians aren't telling you to follow them. They're telling you to follow somebody who is perfect and who does live in the right way. So if I was to come up to you and give you a $100 bill and say to you, once again, I'm talking to my non-Christian friends here, and say, okay, $100 bill, go to the store and spend it whenever you want. So you go to the store, and it turns out it was a fake $100 bill that I gave you. Okay, you're pretty ticked at me, right? Because I just gave you something that was phony. But let's say the next day, one of your friends comes up to you to give you a $100 bill. Are you going to say, nope, I'm never taking a $100 bill again because somebody gave it to me, gave me one yesterday and it was fake? Or are you going to say, well, you know what? If this $100 bill actually works and is real, it can give me a lot of great gain. Just because you got a fake version doesn't mean all the versions are. And I think that is the approach that you should take. For those of you who say, well, Christians are hypocritical, why should I care about this? It doesn't work. It doesn't matter. So one of the reasons I believe, and I won't give you a strong case for the existence of God tonight for the simple reason that other people are coming over the next several weeks to do that kind of thing, so I don't want to overlap on them. But if you have questions on that, you can throw at me in Q&A, and I'll be happy to talk about it. But one of the reasons I believe is not just because I want Christianity to be true, because that's not why. Just because I want something to be true doesn't mean I'm going to follow it. But there's ways in which Christianity demonstrates its validity to me through evidence, reason, rationality, and shows me that's a good thing to believe in. I've so often heard people talk about if we just eradicate religion, the world will be a better place. We won't fly planes into buildings, and we'll be kinder to people. And I think that to some extent, there is some truth to that. But don't we all have the ability to do good or bad, whether we're religious or not? Right? Everybody does good and bad, whether they're religious or not. So you can get rid of religion, but then you're still have the people who are going to do good or bad, because the non-religious do good or bad, just like the religious people do good or bad. So that doesn't make any sense. And it's also fortune-telling, which maybe you have a special ability that I don't have, to be able to say once we eradicate religion, everything will be better. But that's fortune-telling. We don't have the ability to know that, do we? But Why is it that we have this natural tendency to think that we will do good without religion? Well, I want to share with you a particular example by a gentleman named Dr. Jesse Bering. Dr. Bering is an he's an experimental psychologist who specializes in evolutionary psychology and human behavior. Is it still giving you a hard time? Do you want me to come back? Do you want to shut out the program and open it back up? Is that maybe what's happening, or is it the cord? Okay. Well, we will see what happens. Okay. Let me see if it'll go. All right. We'll see what happens. We'll try. Dr. Jesse Bering is an experimental psychologist. He specializes in human evolutionary psychology and human behavior. He was an atheist, and then something weird happened or unexplainable happened when his mother was on her deathbed. And basically, he converted to agnosticism. Okay? Some kind of supernatural experience happened that moved him. Several years ago, he conducted an experiment on kids, ages 5 and 6 and ages 8 and 9. And he brought them into a room, and he said, all right, here's what we're going to do. You see this target right here? I want you to stand with your back to this target. I'm going to give you one of those little like Velcro balls type thing. Throw it with not your dominant hand, so I'm a righty. So I have to do my left hand, your weak hand, over your shoulder and hit the target. Whoever gets the most points will get candy. Now, when you're 5, you'll do anything for like a little Snicker bar or something, Jolly Rancher, right? So these kids were like, oh, okay, cool. So he tells it to the kids, leaves one in the room, gets everybody out, and leaves the kid alone. And of course, there's hidden cameras in the room, but the kids don't know it. So he's watching all of this from another room. So what do you think happens? That kid lines up, got their little ball, and they're tossing it. Oh, this is kind of hard. Like, they do it again, and they keep missing. So what do you think they're going to do? They kind of look around. One little girl runs to the door, opens the door, see nobody's in the hallway, shuts it, and then eventually they take their little ball, run up, put it on the Velcro thing, and run back to the line. Right? They're 5. You've probably seen a little kid do something like this. Okay? And so then he conducts experiment. Again, the second time he does the experiment, he brings adults into the room, and the adults are just sitting in the back of the room. Okay? Well, maybe in this case, out there. They're sitting that way. The kid is here, and they're throwing their Velcro ball. Okay? Then he runs the experiment again, but this time, somebody special is in the room. This time, Princess Alice is going to join us. Now, Princess Alice is special, he tells the kids, because Princess Alice is invisible. So the kids are told, you see this chair? She's sitting in this chair right now. They're, of course, like, oh, that's so cool. They think that's amazing, right? Then he leaves the kid in the room. And here's what Dr. Jesse found. He ran this study with hundreds of kids. And he found that when the adults or when Princess Alice was in the room, kids were significantly less likely to cheat. One kid actually goes up to the chair and actually touches it and says, Princess Alice? Princess Alice? But here's what he found. According to Dr. Jesse, and I quote, the adults in Princess Alice fit the role in the kid's life of what any authority or supernatural power would do. In other words, when the adults or Princess Alice were in the room, the kids were honest. When they were by themselves, they'd run to the board and cheat. And so here's what he said, to quote him, an all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful, interventionist, moralistic deity, that helps steer people in the direction of good behavior. Remember, he's an agnostic. And he realized that when you have that authority over you, you actually behave better. Let me just ask you a simple question. Would you lie to your parents if you knew they could never find out? How about this one? How do you drive down the street when you're just driving versus how do you drive when the police officer is behind you? If you knew you could embezzle $5 million, I got computer guys in here, right? I'm sure I got cybersecurity people in here, okay? If you could embezzle $5 million and you knew you could never get caught, would you do it? What Dr. Jesse found, and please hear me, I'm not saying that you need to believe in God to do good things. No, that is not true. There's plenty of people that do not believe in anything and do wonderfully good things. I would never say that. So that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying to you is, who are you when nobody's looking? Who are you when you're alone? I think one of the clearest examples of this is what people do on websites when they think that they will never get caught or that nobody's watching. Dr. Jesse's findings show us one of the reasons why we need to believe in God. Because we aren't, and I should say the right God, because I don't think all the religions are true. They can't all be true because they say different things, they contradict. But I think what he shows us is that having a moral authority actually makes us behave better than we think. Let me give you a couple more examples of this. When I hear people say to me, Alycia, once again, this is a big argument from the New Atheist movement, Richard Dawkins and crew. Once a religion is eradicated, people will be good, they will behave, they will do better, the world will be a better place. Once again, it was fortune telling, it was an assumption. And what they're learning now is they were wrong. Let me read you what the well-known physicist, Nobel Prize physicist Steven Weinberg once said in April of 1999. He said, religion is an insult to human dignity. With or without it, you'd have good people doing good things and evil people doing evil things. But for good people to do evil things, that takes religion. Well, then let me read you, Steven Weinberg, although I know you're no longer here with us, let me read you some things that non-religious people have done. Keep in mind, I'm also fully aware that religious people have done some stuff too. But if the argument is that once we get rid of religion, everybody will be good, well, then let's look at situations that happen of how people behaved who didn't have religion. So here we go. The First World War from 1914 to 1918 led to 15 million deaths. The Russian Civil War, 1917 and 1922, led to 9 million deaths. The Soviet Union under Stalin's regime from 1924 to 1953 led to 20 million deaths. The Second World War resulted in 55 million deaths. The People's Republic of China under Mao Zedong's regime, 1949 to 1975, 40 million deaths. The Congo Free State, 1886 to 1908, 8 million deaths. China from 1917 to 1928, 800,000 deaths. China from 1928 to 1937 under the nationalist era, 3.1 million deaths. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, 2.8 million deaths. Do I need to keep going? Okay, I will. Algeria, 1954 to 1962, 537,000 deaths. You got Sudan, you got Uganda under Idi Amin, who did horrific things from 1972 to 1979, 300,000 deaths, and it goes on and on and on. None of these were religious-based battles. None of these were religious-based type things. Yes, the religious people do their own things. I 100% agree with that. But none of these were religious-based things. The agnostic David Berlinski says, he responds to Steven Weinberg by saying, just who has imposed on the suffering human race poison gas, barbed wire, high explosive, experiments in eugenics, the formula for Zyklon B, which is what was used in World War II, the gas chambers, if you're not aware, heavy artillery, pseudoscientific justifications for mass murder, cluster bombs, attack submarines, napalm, intercontinental ballistic missiles, military space platforms, and nuclear weapons. If memory serves, it was not the Vatican. And yet we have taught for years that when we eradicate religion, the world will be a better place. Let me give you one more example right out of this institution. In December of 2021, Technology Review, which comes right out of MIT, wrote an article called "The Metaverse Has a Groping Problem Already." Have any of you read this article? Any of you remember this? Okay, let me tell you what's happening. I'm going to paraphrase it for you. Right? People play video games. In this video games, you have avatars. I'll have a female avatar. Somebody will have a male avatar. We're running around and we're doing our things. There may be, 15 of us in a particular scene or whatever's going on. Here is what they found was happening online. Basically, some of the men, we think, you don't fully know, right? Because it's just an avatar in a game. You don't know who it's behind, a male or female. But the male avatar, whoever's controlling them, would bring them over to the female avatar and grope and touch her inappropriately in the video game. Let me read you what it says right here. It says, in the letter, this woman describes a multiplayer mode where all characters were exactly the same, save for their voices. In between a wave of zombies and demons, this is what she says, in between a wave of zombies and demons to shoot down, I was hanging out next to Big Bro 442, waiting for our next attack. Suddenly, Big Bro 442's disembodied helmet faced me dead on. His floating hand approached my body and he started to virtually rub my chest. Stop, I cried. This goaded him on, and even when, because you can speak and they can hear you in the game, so he can hear her saying stop. This goaded him on, and even when I turned away from him, he chased me around, making grabbing and pinching motions near my chest. Emboldened, he even shoved his hand toward my virtual crotch and began rubbing. Remember what I said before from Dr. Jesse's experiment. I'm not saying that people can't do good things without God. What I'm saying is, who are you when you think you can't get caught? And what's happening right here in these virtual games is people say, well, nobody can catch me because I'm sitting on my couch somewhere in some place in the world. Nobody's going to catch me. I'm just going to violate this avatar in the game. I don't think the world would be better. In fact, I think when you look around us, guys, even in this country, there has been a whole lot of fighting the more that we've told people to leave their God behind. We've lost who we are. We don't know who we are. We don't know how to treat others. We don't know what to fight for. We don't know what's a justice, what's an injustice. We don't know truth because we have said truth. Basically, I'll believe truth if it's something that I like, but whatever is factual, it doesn't line up with the story that I want, so we suppress that down. We don't even follow truth anymore. We are so utterly confused. I think we need to strongly consider, once again, if truth matters, and there's only two options, why is it that we struggle to want to believe? I speak in a variety of environments and places, and people always tell me that Christianity lacks evidence, and people will come and speak further on that today. But here's my question for you. What's your evidence that there is no God? Over and over, I've given evidence for God. What is the evidence that there is no God? Because at least I have evidence for my position. Do you have evidence for yours? But also, do we really fully need scientific proof? Because people say to me, but Alycia, there's no scientific proof. Like, I need to be able to prove it scientifically. Do we need scientific proof in order to believe in something? Well, let me give you an example. Because I don't think you do, actually. Let's say you have a headache. You go to the doctor. Doctor says, hey, you know what? I got a drug for you. Take this particular medicine. In 2009 alone, 27 billion doses were sold, which is one tiny fraction of the billions of people that have used this drug over the last 50 plus years. But there's a downside. It can cause some danger to your liver. But billions have been okay with it. So you're like, okay, give me it. No big deal. The doctor says, but there's one more thing you should know. We're not exactly sure how it works in the body. We have ideas and we have guesses, but there just isn't a medical consensus as to exactly how this drug works in your body. So what do? How many of you say, give me the drug? Interesting. It's okay. You can raise those hands high. There's 2, 3. I got a couple. Let me ask you, how many of you have ever taken a Tylenol or acetaminophen or paracetamol? How many of you have ever taken that? Well, then you've taken what they call the enigma pill. because they aren't fully sure how exactly it works in your body. Do you really need full scientific proof to know whether or not Tylenol works? Or has your experience affirmed it to you? How many of you, if I was to say to you guys, tell me about your mother, would say, well, she's this feet tall and she's got this color hair and, she cooks this thing and does this thing. And I say, well, how do you know she's your mother? Well, because I've got memories with her and I got pictures with her and I look like her. Nobody would look at you and think that was silly for you to say that. Would it be right for me to say, but she can't be your mother because you haven't given her a DNA test? You haven't conclusively, scientifically proved it. She can't be your mother. No, guys, that's not how we live. But when it comes to God, we want firm scientific proof. Here's the problem. Science can only test the natural world. The minute you're dealing with the divine being, you're dealing with the supernatural. It's outside the bounds of science. What do? Say, hey, God, can you come here? We're going to test you. How do we know if it's God DNA or not? We don't have anything to compare it to. Like this isn't something that you can test scientifically. So if you've taken acetaminophen, if you've never, DNA tested your mother, I think you're not being irrational, because there's more than just scientific proof to know whether or not something exists. I was once doing a dialogue in the University of McGill University in Montreal with an atheist, and he and I were on the stage, and we were talking about meaning of life, I think is what it was. And he said to me, even if I did believe in a God, the idea that I would want to worship him makes no sense. And I totally get that, right? Why would you want to worship something you don't really know much about? And that's because I think there's only certain things that make sense once you're on the inside. You can see a house from the outside, but when you go in, you see it very differently. So let's just say pretend I was speaking to some kind of scientist. And he was trying to explain to me the inner workings of a cell. And let's pretend that I know very little of a cell, because let's just say I'm coming into today from 200 years ago, let's say. Okay, 400 years ago, right? So I'm clueless. Okay. And they're telling me that it makes up every living thing, and I'm like, what are you talking about? But because my knowledge is so basic, this scientist then begins to describe a cell. Well, there's mitochondria, and there's ribosomes, and there's a smooth and rough endoplasmic reticulum, and I'm like, you lost me. My words don't make any sense. So he's like, all right. She's thoroughly confused. So, you know what? Let me grab a microscope and have you look at it. So he grabs a microscope. And this microscope is very high tech, so I can see the parts of the cell, and I see that it moves. I'm like, well, what's that? What does that thing do? And I'm seeing all these things happen, and it's really interesting. It's actually kind of cool. I'm getting intrigued. But suddenly the cell does something that just throws me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And the scientist sits back, and he realizes just a short amount of time, I went from disinterest and you lost me to wonder. And it wasn't because he said anything profound, but because I was willing to enter into the experience. And my personal experience taught me about what was there. You've probably had this kind of a thing when you talk with your friend about some funny situation that happened, and then you're trying to retell the story to somebody else, and you're trying to explain to them this funny situation that happened, and this friend's looking at you like you can't quite get them. Finally, you're like, you know what, forget it. You just had to be there, right? You can't recreate it if they weren't there in that moment. I think what Christianity asks us to do is to be willing to step into the experience. I'm not saying that you believe in Christianity because it's only your experience. That's not what I'm saying. But you'd be willing to give it a try and push back some of these things that say, I don't think it matters. Why should I care when you don't? It's easy to say that on the outside, but you have no idea if you'll still say that once you're looking in. There's an interesting, do we have any psychology majors here? Any psychology? Okay. There's an interesting idea in child psychology called object permanence. It's hard to prove. But it basically says this. When you have a baby, from 0 to 4 months, they have no concept at all that something exists that they cannot see. Because what object permanence tells us is that children construct their knowledge and ideas of the world based on what they perceive, what they see, what they smell, what they touch, what they experience. So from 0 to 4 months, there's no concept at all that something exists they can't see. So when mom leaves the room, mom is gone. From 4 to 8 months, they begin to understand that something can exist when they can't see it. So if you take a little object, you put it behind your back, they're like, okay, it's gone. You bring it back, they're like, okay, it's kind of cool. But if you, as they start to age, maybe you have it partially sticking out and they see, maybe the whole thing is there. I can only see the part, maybe the whole, as they reach for it. And bit by bit, they learn that even though I can't see it, it's actually still there. And what I hear as adults, people say, I can't see God. I can't perceive God. So therefore, he must not be there. And we just undid years of normal childhood development, which tells us that things exist that we can't see. But here's the thing. What leads a baby to actually grow in their understanding that something exists that they can't see? It isn't because their mom's threatening them, because they're 4 months old. They don't necessarily understand that, right? Usually these are games played in fun and that kind of thing. It's not because of fear or discipline. It's because a child is willing to look. They're willing to take that chance to see what is it that's behind mom's back. G.K. Chesterton once said, "The Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried." It's not that it's been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and left untried. This stuff matters because we've already looked at how different the world would be without a moral accountability factor. We can see in our culture around us how we've lost our compass almost, like our way. Everybody's fighting, everybody's angry. Social media has made us depressed and made us confused about so many different things. We're yelling at each other, we're fighting with each other. And social media gives you the perfect platform to do it anonymously. Be somebody that you would never be to somebody's face. And even when there's enough evidence pointing in the direction of God, we still say it's never enough. It's never enough. I need more. I want more evidence. But yet we take a Tylenol without ever really looking into the evidence for it. I think ultimately what the Christian message is that God wants you to know who he is. But there's a level, and if you were here, I spoke last year and I talked about why isn't God more obvious? There is a level in which God lets himself be known, but there's a level in which he keeps part of himself hidden. And he has to, because you wouldn't be able, if this is a God that is all-knowing, all-powerful, you wouldn't be able to handle all of him. And we see examples in the Bible, actually, of when people didn't see all of God, but they got pieces of him, and they were terrified and ran away. So even when he showed them a certain piece of him, they got scared. So he can only give so much, which is why there's that aspect of, I always want more. But what Christianity teaches is that God wants to actually be with you and live closely with you. That's why in the very beginning, he created Adam and Eve, as Christians believe, in a garden, and God was there. There's a meaning and intentionality behind your life. You aren't a mistake. You aren't just here because it was like, oops, we didn't mean for you to come in existence. You didn't take God by surprise. But when we look at this question of why does it matter, understand that without God, your life has no meaning. All of these things that you are studying, all of these things that you are working so hard to learn, the science tells us, look, we had a beginning point, and we're expanding. And eventually, what's going to happen? We're going to get to the point where the expansion is going to be so great that everything is going to be done. We're going to be done. So why are we doing all of these discoveries? Why are we studying? Why are we trying to find the cure for cancer if we're all going to die anyways? It's like painting a ship that's sinking. There's no meaning in anything that you do, guys. It doesn't ultimately matter. But if there indeed is a God, then it does matter what you do. It does matter that you were born when you were born now and not 600 years ago. The meaning of your life was to know him, to live in a way that he wants you to live, and using your gifts and your talents and all of these passions and things that you have, you use them because it matters, because each person you interact with matters, and how you impact their life matters, because these are valuable beings. That there is an intentional purpose for your existence. To live life without meaning is very difficult. Many of you have heard of Alycia. She was one of the original crew of the Four Horsemen of Atheism. She was supposed to be the fifth one, the day before their big YouTube video where the four of them were sitting around a table that made them the Four Horsemen. She had to back out. I think she got sick or had something else happen. But she was part of the New Atheism crew, and one of the reasons why she is now a Christian, I don't know if you've seen their article, but she left atheism because she said it was so meaninglessness. There's no meaning within atheism. And she couldn't deal with it anymore. I want to give you some final thoughts before I turn it over to Q&A. There's many reasons why people believe in a God. It may be fear, right? They're scared of the afterlife. They're scared of hell. They're scared of punishment. Maybe they're scared of their parents. Maybe they're scared of, another friend or something. Maybe somebody that doesn't believe because they don't really think things through. Maybe somebody believes because they just blindly follow things. Some people believe because they do believe it's true. And there's many reasons why people don't believe. Many. Sometimes believing asks too much of you. Sometimes there isn't enough proof. Sometimes it's that they actually don't want there to be a God. The thing that I found that convinces me the most, actually, about Christianity, I've been doing this now 10 years. 10 years ago, actually, I was here speaking at Reasons for God. January 2014. And I've had to go through evidence. I think that year I went to evidence for the resurrection. I may have done why would God allow suffering. I've had to look at these things over and over and over. Evidence for origins, for fine-tuning, all of these things. You know what convinces me now? It isn't so much all that. What convinces me now is that Christianity works. Because if you were going to make up a religion, you wouldn't make up a religion that tells you to hold back your desires for sex and money and success and material things. If you were going to make up a religion, you wouldn't follow something that tells you the last will be first. If you were going to make up a religion, you wouldn't have a religion where the founder sacrifices himself for bad people. Not good, but bad people. When I see people looking and trying in other areas of their life to find meaning only to end up in pits of despair, which is why Bertrand Russell, the great atheistic philosopher, told people, stop looking for meaning. You're not going to find it. There is no ultimate meaning. Make up your own little individual meanings, what he told people. As I watch people end up in despair, as I watch our mental health numbers rise, as I watch the answers that everything is hopeless, that there's no greater purpose in what you do, that morality is subjective, and so nobody knows what's right and what's wrong. Nobody knows what to fight for. Nobody knows what justice cause to fight for. Nobody knows who they're supposed to love and who they're supposed to hate, and there's all of this confusion. And I look at Christianity, and it gives me all of those answers. And it tells me that every single person is valuable. It tells me there is a right and wrong that every single person on the face of this planet is held accountable to. So I can know when somebody does an injustice because it's a violation of that moral law. And I know I can be right in fighting against it. Helps me to understand who I am, what my identity is. Helps me to understand my purpose and my meaning. And so there is no lack of hopelessness for me because it also promises me a world of no pain. Promises me eternity with God. It promises me an eternity with the greatest being ever. And so no matter how bad life gets here, it can't pull me away from that. And what I see as I look around me is how people who hold a different view than that, like Alycia, are leaving those views and coming to Christianity. It works. Before I send you guys to Q&A, where you can ask me on a range of different things. The theologian Dallas Willard once said, "Because I make my living as a university professor and philosopher, I'm frequently asked," this is a Christian, frequently asked in so many words, "Why do you follow Jesus Christ?" He said, "My answer is always the same. Who else did you have in mind?" I guess when I look at the answer to why does this matter, why should I care, why should I believe, I guess my question is to whom else should I go? Because I am not intelligent enough to actually determine these things for myself. To where else should I go? So with that said, I want to stop there, and I want to give you guys time to ask questions. I know that you have Slido, and I want to go ahead and give you the opportunity to take a look at that. And if you have questions live, we can do that too. But I'm going to let my friend here guide us in this discussion.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome.
Try again.
There we go. No?
It's coming. There you go.
All right.
There we are.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can we get a round of applause for our speaker? Thank you so much. That was a really dynamic, interesting presentation, and I liked a lot of the takes you had. I thought they were really unique. So just for logistics to review, we're going to have our Slido QR code up there, so feel free to scan it now if you didn't scan it earlier. And you can submit questions. We already have a lot of questions submitted, so what I need you guys to do is upvote those if you see ones that you're interested in, because those go to the top of our list, and we're going to just kind of go a little bit in order. But we can first ask if anyone wants to ask a live question first. So if you do, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll go into Slido. And the other thing, just a quick note, is that it's better to phrase questions as questions. If you have an opinion, you can put that in there too, but maybe like reword it as a question. That might just be a little more helpful to have a discussion going. But yeah, anyone want to ask a live question? Okay, cool. We'll go with the Slido then. So the top question right now is...
just keep switching.
Oh, yeah, keep switching. Okay, well, I'll go with... Let me reload it here. We'll go with, how do the different Christian denominations like evangelicals, Catholics, Protestants, Adventists, etc., relate to the concept of one true religion?
That's a great question. I don't know who asked that, but well done on that question. It's really confusing, huh? You know, you're Baptist here, you're Methodist here, you're Adventist here, you're Presbyterian here, you're like, what in the world? There's so many words. I get it. So let me make something really clear and make it as easy for you as I can. All of those titles are going to refer to various aspects and traditions that are, or maybe even way of running your service, but they don't have anything to do with the core essential beliefs about Christianity. So let me give you an example. If you believe that Jesus is God, that you believe that he came to earth and he lived a perfectly good life and he died on the cross and he rose from the dead 3 days later, and the only way to get to heaven is through him, then all of those groups fall under there. Those are core essential doctrines. Where they're going to differ on is who really was Mary in terms of how do we understand her identity. So that's where you're going to get a lot more of the Catholic views on that. They're going to say that Mary lived a sinless life, for example. She was born sinless and lived sinless. Protestants, so you have Catholic and Protestants, but both under the category of Christianity. And then you're going to have Orthodox and Eastern Orthodox and Coptics and all these kind of things. Protestants, which where you hear the word Christian, usually they're under the Protestant group. But they would say that Mary wasn't divine. Okay, there's an example. But both groups are going to believe that Jesus is God. He lived, he died on the cross, he rose from the dead 3 days later. He's the only way in which you can get to heaven. Same thing if you look at Baptists, Methodists, Adventists. They're all going to hold to those same essential core things. But if you go to a Presbyterian church, they're going to use like a book and maybe sing songs out of a hymn book. I grew up in the Pentecostal churches. We danced our way through the song time, okay? That's how Pentecostal churches are. Okay, they're just very free and very flowy, right? You can go to a Baptist church, and they're going to maybe be, depending on which one it is, some of them are going to be really expressive in their music, other ones are going to be more reserved. So so they would all say that they believe in the same core thing. So if this gentleman here said, Alycia, will you come to my church? The Sunday, like, oh, what are you, Christian? He says, yes, I would go. I'm not like, are you Methodist? Are you Presbyterian? Are you, like, I would never even do that. I would just say, oh, sure, let's go. Okay, because all of those other things are peripheral, but they're not part of the core. Hopefully that helps you understand that how they all sync and differ.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that really detailed answer. Next question is sort of related, and I'm going to combine the top two. So one person says that it's the argument for why we should believe in God is that believing in God helps people behave better. That is not exclusive to other religions. Mm-hmm. So how do you know that Christianity is the one true religion?
Oh, okay, so we are going to do that big old topic. Yeah, okay. How do we know that Christianity is one true religion? Fantastic question, and I'm not saying, because this question is absolutely spot on. Yeah, sure, believing God helps people do better, but Muslims believe in objective morality, right? A Mormon believes in objective morality. Alycia, you haven't singled out Christianity. You're 100% true. And that's why I said I'm really not making a Christian case, because other people are doing that. But let's do it right now. I was a criminal justice major, so here's how I think, guys. I think in terms of crime scenes. I'm sorry, so we're going into a crime scene. Okay, here we go. Right? I have a friend of mine, and this friend of mine I know is in an abusive marriage. So I like to check in on her every couple days. So I call her. She doesn't answer. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Try the next day. She doesn't answer. I'm texting, nothing. I'm like, okay, let me go to her house. I go to her house, knock on the door, ring the doorbell, no answer. Try the door handle, and the door opens up. I'm like, well, that's weird. I walk in. The house looks disheveled. I'm like, well, that's weird. I'm calling out her name and her husband's name, and nobody's answering. Well, that's odd, right? I'm getting more and more nervous as I go along here. And next thing you know, I see maybe, looks like, is that blood on the wall, right? So now I'm starting to freak out. So what do? I pick up the phone, I call 911, I say, I think something has gone on here. And they're going to come over, and you're going to listen to what I had to say, and they're going to go further into seeing what's there, what really happened. Would anybody call me irrational for calling the police and saying, I think something is wrong here? I don't have conclusive proof that something happened to her, but I have a series of things. She's in a domestic violence situation. She's not answering the phone. She's not answering the door. The house is disheveled. Nobody's answering. It looks like there's blood on the walls. I have a series of things that at least point me in this direction that something is wrong here. And what the police are going to do is they're going to conduct an investigation to get even further information to say, yes, the husband is guilty or he's not, or she's safe or she's not, or whatever. That is how I see the case for Christianity. Let me tell you what I mean. I see the origins, we need an origin story, and there's no other origin story that is put forward as well as what comes out of the theistic religions. And I use theistic intentionally there, right? Because many religions believe that God created, okay? Evolution is just a process theory that has nothing to do with whether or not God created. That just talks about once things came into being, right, this is how they went from there. But an origins theory is what kicked the whole system going. Okay, because I'll hear people say to me, well, I believe in evolution, so I can't believe in God. I'm like, there's an entire organization of Christians who believe in evolution. It's called Biologos. You can check them out, biologos.org. Actually, if you've heard of Francis Kahn, who is head of the National Institutes of Health of this country, you probably heard his name during COVID. That is his organization, Biologos. He is a Christian scientist, and he believes in evolution. So those two so people say it to me, and I'm like, that's not really how that works. But we have origins, we have the fine-tuning, which is another little piece of evidence for me, how the universe is so meticulously fine-tuned for us, not just to exist, but for us to live in it as well. And I think morality, the sense that we all feel like that there is a morality. 9 years ago, I was here, and speaking with a gentleman who was an atheist, and I remember him saying to me, he's like, Alycia, I'm an atheist, so I can't believe in objective morality, but I just think rape is wrong. And I know I can't hold that view as an atheist, but I just think it's wrong. Why is it that he's wrestling, that he thinks that certain things are wrong? You can't hold that view without there being some kind of moral law that people are held to. So I think morality, all of those things are not uniquely Christian. Any theistic religion is probably going to hold to those views. A Muslim would agree with me, a Mormon, a Jehovah's Witness would agree with me on those things. Here's where it gets uniquely Christian. It comes down to Jesus. The fact that today is January 18th, is because this man existed. I'm not saying the calendar is exactly right. What I'm saying is his entrance into the world was so impactful that it impacted the calendar and gave you the date of birth that your birthday is. That is wild. Clearly there's something about it. Number two, I can tell you he lived. I can tell you that he had followers, that he did good things, that he was crucified, that the guy who crucified him, the Roman person who had him crucified, was a guy named Pontius Pilate, and that something happened 3 days later. And I don't need the Bible for any of those facts. Those are all written in external documentation outside of the Bible. I think the evidence for the resurrection is overwhelming. So now I'm getting uniquely Christian. I think the evidence for the resurrection is overwhelming. There's been no other good explanation as to what happened to this man. Nobody's ever claimed to have his body. Nobody's ever found his body. If they did find his body, I would no longer be a Christian, okay? That's my falsifiability factor for those who want to know, right? If they found his body, Christianity is a waste. Nobody's ever found it. Nobody has any explanation. Nobody's claimed to have stolen it. It's just gone. But we know he died because it's written about in multiple places outside the Bible. I think the credibility of the Bible is on there too. So as I keep going, you see now I've got much more Christian. So you're right, morality doesn't uniquely single out Christianity, but I think, once again, the comprehensive case says I don't know what else fits other than Christianity is true with all of those facts, meaning of life, etc., and those kind of things. So that's a very broad kind of way of kind of letting you know. For me, it's the compilation of things, just like when I went into my friend's house and was trying to find her and I had all these clues that something was wrong, and nobody would call me irrational for calling the police. Nobody should call somebody irrational. When you have that much evidence for something, there's no other explanation than Jesus lived, died, rose from the dead. And if he rose from the dead, I don't have that kind of power, so maybe he's got some kind of power I don't have, so he's worth me listening to.
Awesome. Thanks for that breakdown. Do we have anyone who wants to ask a live question? Just going to give another chance.
And the first one's always the hardest. So let's skip the first one, go to the fourth one. Who has the fourth live question?
Yeah, exactly.
So much easier to ask the fourth live question than the first live question. Anybody? See, there we go. Told you the fourth is always easier. Talk to me, friend.
All right, so you're talking about, you're listing a bunch of, thank you. Okay, you're listing a bunch of examples of people doing bad things without religion involved. But how can we connect that back to the argument that religion is good? Because just because religion wasn't involved doesn't mean they were done because of the lack of religion, right? Like you mentioned, like bad people doing bad things.
Sure.
So it could, like, why can we make the case that it's because of a lack of religion rather than just bad people doing bad things?
Say that. So can we make the case that it's a lack of religion versus bad people doing bad things?
Yeah,
Can we, so I guess I would say, because once again, I'm not going to say that Christians don't do bad things too, okay? So we do. My sole purpose of saying that was because the new atheistic argument, my friend, is that if we eradicate religion, the world will be good. People will do good things. People will be better. People will love each other. They will treat each other bad because they'll say religion is what makes people do bad things. Religion makes people fly planes into buildings and these kind of things. What I was trying to show is that, okay, well, let's look at what non-religious people do. If it's true, what do they do? And they don't seem to do good things either. So I was trying to say we all do bad things. That's why my bottom. Whether you're religious or not, we all do bad things. Is that clear? Does that make more sense?
So I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong,
No,
is
please.
That religion is not the sole cause of bad things.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, well said. Yep. I think we all have the potential to do evil things, whether we are religious or not. Now, can religion make us do bad things? Absolutely. 100%. Can non-religion make us do bad things? Absolutely, 100%. I'm just saying our good or bad isn't necessary. It's not just a religious problem that we all have that capability. Thank you so much. Good clarification question.
Awesome. Oh, we'll take more.
Okay.
Person in the back with the brown coat. Yeah.
Hi there.
Hi. So I had a follow-up question regarding this part of the talk.
Yes.
Could you maybe talk a bit more about how our current view of morality and like justice systems is reliant on beliefs that actually rooted in Christianity or religion in general?
Oh, that is a fantastic question, my friend. Right. So, as a criminal justice major, there are some fundamental things that you need to do when it comes to court cases in order to determine whether or not somebody is guilty or not. You have to establish that they did something wrong. Okay? So you need a moral system. The question is, how do we know what's truly wrong? This is where I think the Christian view is helpful, because let me tell you what we've done. As a society, what we've done is we said we'll come up with our own moral system, and we'll say that marijuana is if you are caught smoking whatever marijuana, you deserve prison. And we sent people to prison, took mothers away from their children and families, and fathers away from their families, and we sent them to prison for years for marijuana usage, only to then legalize it a few years ago. Our morality actually, even within our criminal justice system, because we came up with it, was subjective. What do we now say to all those people that we locked up all those years? Sorry. Oops. In other words, we can't even function as a criminal justice system unless we actually agree that there are certain principles that are fundamentally wrong. How can we even agree rape is wrong? Let me give an example. I say to you, a young girl was raped. How many of you would say that was a bad thing? Probably a lot of your hands would go up. If not, most of your hands would go up. Okay. Now we have the ability, we're going 30 years into the future. She got pregnant from that rape. She decided to keep that baby. That baby grew up, came up with the cure for cancer, and saved the lives of 45 million people. Would you now say that rape was actually a good thing? Some of you might be thinking, well, a lot of people were saved from that. Like, it's making you maybe wonder, right? We as a society don't even have the ability to determine whether something is morally right or wrong, because we can't always see the effect and the outcome to know whether or not it was right or wrong. So as a Christian, I would say that is wrong, given all the time. Doesn't matter what the outcome is. Doesn't matter if millions of people were blessed because of it or had a better life because of it. It is wrong because it is an objective moral value that it was violated. And the reason why I can say it's wrong is because I believe that there is value to human beings, which is also a Judeo-Christian. That is specific to Judeo-Christian view, that all people are created in the image of God. And so all people have value. There is something unique to every individual, which is why if I wake up in the morning and I step on an ant, I don't go to prison. But if I wake up in the morning and step on my ant, it's a different thing. Why? Because my ant is seen as valuable. But you don't get that from any other worldview outside of the Judeo-Christian view. So in order to do these things in our society, we need these views. And this is part of the issue that I'm seeing. This is one of the big things that Alycia, who left atheism, says. She goes, we're missing the fact that freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom of conscience and all of these things are Judeo-Christian principles. This is the Christian worldview baked into our society that we aren't realizing. There's Christianity woven all throughout. We just reject the God that goes along with it. So hopefully that helps you see better, my friend, that our society is undergirded with objective morality and image of God, that every person is valuable. But those are Christian principles woven into society so that our society can actually function. You take those out, we won't function well. Thank you for that question. It was fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for the answer. We're running a little short on time, so we're going to take one more question from the Slido here. But it says, you said that we need to follow Jesus to go to heaven. How do we actually know what Jesus' teachings are when the Bible is known to have been changed by man?
Oh, I like that. Okay. Yes. Good. Let's talk about that. The Bible's been known to be changed by man. Let me just start there. So my question for you is, what is it that you've seen was changed by man? This is why I'm saying this, is because we actually don't have one manuscript of the Bible. We have multiple fragments of the text. All right? So, for example, we have one letter, and let's speak about the New Testament right now, which is the story of Jesus and his life. We have one of them, the very first one is the book of Matthew. we don't have just one copy of Matthew. In fact, we actually don't have any of the originals, okay? Full disclosure, we don't have any of the originals, okay? But what we have are copies of the originals. But we don't just have one copy of Matthew. We have multiple copies of Matthew. We have many copies of Matthew. And then we have people who quoted Matthew, certain part of Matthew, and something else they were writing. And somebody over here quoted this other part of Matthew and something else that they were writing. So in other words, when people say to me that humanists changed the Bible, or humanities had to change the story of Jesus, my question is, well, they would have had to go and gather all of those ones that spread out and change them all. Christian tradition tells us that 20 or so years after the resurrection of Jesus, Thomas goes to India. And he shares the message of Jesus in India. That's why you see many Indians with the last name Thomas, because it birthed the Indian church. Also, there's a story in the book of Acts of an Ethiopian eunuch who comes from Ethiopia, works with the queen in Ethiopia. He comes to Jerusalem, becomes a Christian, presumably goes back to Ethiopia, but if you talk to the Ethiopian church, which I just talked to somebody a week or so ago because they just celebrated Ethiopian Christmas, they trace their roots as a church back to that Ethiopian eunuch. People have to understand that this message spread. So in order to change it, you would have to go and find all those pieces. Plus, what about all the external documentation, the Roman sources, the Jewish sources, that neither one of those are Christian sources, neither one of those look favorably or have any kind of bias towards Christianity. You'd have to destroy all those that talk about Jesus. So how can we know who Jesus is if it has been changed or corrupted? I guess I would say I don't think that has to be the concern, that it was changed or is somehow incredible or discredited. So how do we actually know what Jesus' teachings are? I think you actually read the primary way that God gave humanity to know who he was. You actually take a look at the Bible yourself and read it and find out for yourself what you think about that. There's cities that are mentioned. You can verify those cities. There's places that are mentioned. I mean, the Bible is historically verifiable in so many different ways. Not everything is. We don't know every city the Bible mentions from 2,000 years ago. We don't have that. But there are plenty, like Jerusalem, which is probably the easy example. We've got Roman rulers, Pilate and all these people that we've actually been able to verify in other sources that actually existed that the Bible talks about. There's ways that we can verify the text by looking in other sources. And so I would encourage you, what I'm asking you from anybody in this room is I'm not saying follow me. Please don't follow me. I will lead you to the wrong place. I still use Google Maps to get to where I need to go. Please do not follow me. But what I'm asking you is that as a creation, as a human being, you will never fully understand your full potential, the reasons for which you were created, unless, and even who you are, unless you know your Creator. Period. It'd be like if I went back 400 years ago and gave somebody an iPhone. They'd be like, what do you do with this? So they bring it home, they take it, use it, and hammer a nail into the wall. Come back to me the next day and say, Alycia, this thing is just junky. What did you give me? I'm like, what did you do with it? Well, I hammered a nail into the wall. That's not what it was for. Well, you didn't tell me. I didn't make it. I didn't know how to use it. But if I made this phone, I could tell them, here's how it's supposed to function. Here's what its usage is. Here's what its purpose is. Here's how it'll help you. Here's how it will benefit you. So you don't have to sit here and try and guess and figure it out for yourself. You want to know you have to know the being who made you. And so I think you pick up the Bible and you learn about who that is. And you will learn that by reading about Jesus.
Thank you for that answer. Can I ask one last
Absolutely.
really quick question?
Ask away.
It's the top one, so you can give a short answer
Okay.
because we got a minute. But
sorry.
if
Such
someone
good
wants
questions.
to believe, what do you suggest they do first, and how do you learn to pray?
Oh, boy, you guys aren't picking easy ones, are you? Someone wants to believe, what do you suggest to do first, and how do you learn to pray? I think if somebody wants to believe, what I want you to do is I want you to first read some of the life of Jesus. I want you to know in whom you want to believe. God could have stayed distant. Jesus is God. Christians believe he's fully God, also fully man. That's a head game. We can deal with that another time. But God's coming down close to you. Why? Because if God just stays up there, it's really, 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 really hard to know who he is. So he comes down. And he walks, and he talks, and he heals people, and he does miracles, and he says, Jesus says, believe me, if not for the evidence of the miracles themselves, he gives people evidence, he raised people from the dead. You need to know the being in whom you want to believe in. And you need to know his message for you is simple. You don't have to worry about how do I get to God, because you can't. I'm going to tell you, sorry, pop that balloon right now. You can't get there. You can't. You will never be good enough. So what God does is he comes down to you to say, look, just recognize that you're not good enough to get to me, that you're just a person who is messed up. And recognize that the only way then you can get to God is by basically allowing Jesus. If I could use this a silly example, pretend that this is, I'm Jesus and you're here, and you basically just like allow his cloak to kind of just cover you in his goodness. So when you stand before God after you die and he says, why should I let you into heaven? You're like, well, I'm with him, actually. There's no reason for you to let me in. But he's covered me in his goodness, and there's nothing I can do to get there, so he's bringing me in with him. And so somebody wants to believe, I would say, it's very simple. You believe in your heart that Jesus Christ truly is Lord, and you're willing to confess with your mouth that God raised him from the dead. That's what makes somebody a Christian. Not someone who's done a bunch of really good things. Not someone who's got it all right, who has it all figured out, who has every question about the Bible answered. I do not have every question about the Bible answered. Thank you for not asking me on some random passage, because I may or may not know it. But this is what I know, is that I'm not a really good person all the time. One bad deed disqualifies me from a perfect place, so I need help. And thankfully, God provides the means for me to get there, and that's Jesus. And it's through him that I can be with God, know my purpose, know my identity, know my value, know my worth, know my meaning, know how to live, know how to treat others, because the Creator tells me about the creation. And so that is what I'd encourage you to do. Read the text, learn about him, and when you get to that point where you say, I do believe that he is Lord, that he truly is God, that you surrender to that. And to learn to pray, it is as simple as talking to me. There's no like, okay, do I need to say this thing 4 or 5 times? No, just talk to God. He understands whatever language you speak. And talk to him. And be honest with him. And just, God, I messed up. I'm not very good. I'm still trying to figure this out, trying to understand you more. But can you just forgive me? And maybe we can start on this journey together. I'm sorry for what I've done, but I believe in you, and I want to go forward with you. That simple prayer is enough.
Awesome. Can we get another round of applause for our speaker? Thank you so much, Alycia, for all of those answers and the talk and everything. That was great.